There are lots of ways to do nice buttonholes on your knitting machine, and today I'm going to show how to do a good vertical buttonhole. This looks good on both sides of the button band, and it's a simple 1x1 ribbed button band. Before you begin knitting, you need a long piece, maybe several yards, of the garment yarn, so pull that off the cone or the skein before you begin your buttonholes. Here's the needle arrangement. Every other needle is on the main bed for a total of 8 needles in the middle of the bed. And then on the ribber bed, it's your typical 1x1 ribber arrangement with every other needle on the ribber bed as well. So I have 8 needles on the main bed, 8 needles on the ribber. I'm on the main bed for the rightmost needle and on the ribber for the leftmost needle. I'm doing the typical ribber cast on, but I am using waste yarn. I'm going to use the 7 weight hangers to weight my band. I insert one from the left, and then I insert one from the right. I also hung a clothespin on the end of the yarn. Then, bringing the 2 loops at the bottom of the weight hangers together underneath the machine, I'm putting 1 weight. Now set the carriages for circular knitting, and you're going to do the 3-row selvage. Now set the machine to the main tension. Cancel the circular knitting and knit some rows with waste yarn. Now we need to cut the waste yarn. My ravel cord is a bright pink color, and I'm just going to take my latch tool. I'll bring the last little bit of the cut waste yarn between the beds, and now I'm going to dangle the ravel cord between the beds. I'll catch it underneath with my fingers, and I'm putting a clothespin on the end. Now I've got this ravel cord hanging from a clothespin in between the 2 beds. Go ahead, keeping it free of the gate pegs, which is really the only tricky bit. I'm threading it into the machine, and I'm knitting across just 1 row. I brought the loose end in between the beds, and I'm putting a clothespin on it too, just to make it hang down. Now what I'm going to do is a new zigzag row. I'll start by threading the machine with the garment yarn. I'm setting the machine back to the tightest tension. So here I go, going across with a zigzag row. And it's very tight, which is what I wanted. Now I'm going to turn up, set the machine for circular, and I'm going to do my 3-row selvage. And that's it. I'm cast on with my main yarn. Now I'm just going to set it to the main tension for the ribbing and cancel the circular, and I'll just knit enough rows to arrive at the point where I'm about to put the first buttonhole. You want to do the first buttonhole when you've done enough rows for the buttonhole, but arrange it so that you end with the carriage on the left and the yarn coming from the left. Make sure that both the ribber and the main bed carriage are set to hold at this point. That is, they are set to just float over and not knit needles that are pulled all the way out to hold position. Now you need to unthread the carriage and park the yarn. So take the yarn out of the carriage, bring it right along this edge between the ribber beds, in between the beds, and put it under the little ridge at the lip of the machine. That just holds the yarn temporarily. Now put all the needles into hold position and move the carriage safely to the right side without knitting anything. Now we're going to put half of these needles into work by slipping them back halfway. Just like that. Then we're going to thread that piece of yarn that we set aside at the beginning. The piece of yarn is just fed between the beds. Catch it underneath with your hand and put a clothespin on it. You want to wait. Now grab this top piece, hold it up, and fiddle with it, and just make sure that this thing is not caught on any gate pegs. Bring the carriage kind of close to the work to make it easy to thread, and bring this yarn, this extra piece of yarn, in here and thread it. And you're going to hand feed it, holding the yarn gently from above, and knit 4 rows. Lift up as you return. After you've knitted 4 rows, take the hook on your latch tool, bring it between the beds, and pull the extra yarn down. Grab it with your hand and pull it all the way down, out of the way, and if you want, you can hang a clothespin on that so it will stay down. Now you need to get the carriage to the other side without knitting. So yes, of course, you put these needles back in hold and go to the other side without knitting. If you're wondering what we're doing over there, we're going to rethread the carriage. We take this yarn that was in the yarn clip and we feed it into the carriage. Make sure there's not too much overhead slack by pulling down the yarn on the upper tension unit. And then approach the knitting slowly, just to make sure it's not caught on a gate peg. I just went back and forth a little. Now I can bring some of these needles into work to do the other side of the buttonhole. I did 4 on the right, 4 ribber and 4 main bed before. Now I do the 4 on the left, on the bottom, and on the top. So these 4 needles will knit, and I simply, lifting up as I approach, knit 4 rows. See how the yarn just hangs over the work here? Doesn't knit on those other needles that we don't want to knit yet. Now I'm on the left again. I've done my 4 rows. Now I want to continue with my button band. So I just bring these needles halfway back into upper working position so they will knit, and I can continue knitting away on my button band. After removing all the hardware, I have this. So I want to get this piece of waste yarn off, and to do that I'm going to pull out this ravel cord. See what a nice firm edge this made at the bottom of the ribbing? Sometimes you really need the ribbing to have a little bit tighter edge, and that's the way to do it with that ravel cord. Now here's the buttonhole itself. See how it just vanishes into the ribbing? Let me get my finger in there so you can see it a little better. There's the opening. You do have the extra piece of yarn over on one side. I prefer that that be the side that's going to be against the rest of the garment. In other words, that gives me a seam where I can hide these ends. So fortunately, this is reversible, and you can pretty much pick which side you need it to be, whether you're doing a man's or a woman's garment. When I go to the store, I'll pick up a card of buttons and I'll take my button band and just try it right on there, being careful not to damage the card. It's a great way to shop for buttons and to know for certain that they're going to look good. Take either the sweater along or take the button band along to the store.